It's entitled Sky Gardens. It's composed of 2 photographs I took in Singapore. Starting from the left is a view from a winding stairway in a greenhouse dome, one of 2 domes. And starting from the right is a curved walkway above the ground outside. My interests in art are simple. I like lines, shapes, and colors. For this quilt, I was intrigued by the curved lines, the dome house lines, the lines of the outside trellises coming up, the lines of the aerial walkways, even a building in the distance curves. I might note that this is a whole cloth quilt. I composed the design on Photoshop and sent it out for digital printing. Quilting is simple. I just follow the sawtooth lines. When we're up in the air, the world becomes 3-dimensional. Instead of looking straight ahead, left and right, we can look down and we can look into the distance. In this quilt, if you look down on the right, you would see small figures looking at the plants. This quilt was up on my wall for a few weeks before I could notice a large cargo ship anchored out at sea through the dome windows on the left. Singapore has more shipping than probably any other port in the world. Next, I show another quilt using the same sawtooth collage technique. I haven't seen anybody else use it, so I can for now say it's unique. This shows both the inside and outside of the San Diego Public Library. The inside has a large atrium that you can see up half a dozen floors to the top. Next is another example of this sawtooth separation of images. This quilt contains 6 photos. 3 photos were collaged and start at the top coming down, and 3 photos are in the bottom going up. These photos were at Balboa Park in San Diego. The architecture is mainly from 1915, from the Panama, California Exposition, which marked the opening of the Panama Canal. Next, we see a quilt that looks quite different, but what you notice about it, it has sawtooth lines going vertically and horizontally. When I looked at the earlier quilts, I thought, well, what if I crossed sawtooth lines? This is what happens. I chose not to use photographs because I thought it might be too confusing in the center where you have 4 photographs competing for space. Here I used 4 square images of stripes, fine stripes. And I've done 10 of these quilts, and each uses colors created by different artists. This first quilt, Color Square number 1, the artist is Dan Namenga, who's a Native American artist from the Southwest. So you see what you recognize as Southwest colors: turquoise blue, golden yellow, and rich reds. Now, to create the stripes from images of Dan Dominguez's paintings, I used a technique I first tried in 2003. In that year, I was invited to a museum quilt exhibition in Ohio that commemorates the bicentennial of the state of Ohio. I didn't have any images of Ohio, so I went to the State of Ohio website, which featured photographs of the fall colors at various state parks. The next image shows the quilt I created at that time. It is 5 by 5 feet, just like my color squares are 5 feet by 5 feet. Back in 2003, I was hand painting quilts. So this is a whole cloth quilt that I just took paintable white fabric, cotton, and carefully painted these stripes. When digital printing became more widely available through companies that make banners, I understandably switched to digital printing because laboriously painting these stripes and other images took too much of my time. Next, if I orient the stripes vertically in a image, it makes the quilt look vertical. Horizontal, it looks horizontal. And I thought, well, why not rotate the stripes 45 degrees along with the sawtooth? And this image is from a quilt, color square number 5, which has colors from Frank Stella's Moby Dick series of painted sculptures and lithographs. Next image shows some other ways of combining images. Next, please. Yeah, this is called shopping number 1. It's from, shopping number 1 had vertical stripes. That's another way to combine 2 images. This was of a shopping mall, a number of photos taken. This image is entitled Anza Borrego Desert, which is a desert east of San Diego. What I call the background image was taken in winter with storm clouds coming off the mountains and hanging over the desert. The second image, which I call the foreground, is of the wildflowers that bloomed in the spring. This pattern was taken from a tiling pattern that was described in a book. The artist M.C. Escher used this tiling pattern to make tiles for his Rome apartment. I thought it would work in a quilt because it's a nice area filling pattern. Next, I show a quilt that I call San Diego Courthouse number 3. It's the third of 4 quilts derived from photographs I took of a new courthouse building designed by the architect Richard Meyer. And he designs white buildings. I introduced color. This was composed of 3 separate photographs layered in Photoshop. And to introduce some hue into this, I changed the neutral colors to a hue, which is easy to do in Photoshop. I should mention that Photoshop has more than 24 ways of combining 2 images. And of course, you can vary the brightness, color, contrast of each image to change how they are combined also. If you have 3 images, then it just multiplies by a large factor the number of options. Some people think this looks like a weaving by Annie Albers of the Bauhaus. Well, Richard Myers is a modern architect who follows Bauhaus principles with lots of horizontal lines and rectangles. The next quilt is my final image. This is called Hillcrest Cinemas. This is a building complex in San Diego, and I like the colorful buildings and the fact that I could take 3 photographs from different heights, one at ground level, one mid-level, and one at high level. I then went to Photoshop and played for hours and hours to bring in and out various images as they overlapped. And so I would call this a mashup or a deconstruction of the building. I might say that I think you can gather from what I've shown that what I like about art is just the simple visual stimulation of art. I like lines, shapes, and colors.